and Sissy had scooted off down to the beach. And off in the distance, Canon O'Hanlon is offering benediction. How moving the scene there in the gathering twilight. The last glimpse of Erin, the touching chime of those evening bells, and at the same time, a bat flew forth and the ivy belfry to the dusk, hither and thither with a tiny lost cry. And Gertie could see far away the lights of the lighthouse, so picturesque, she would have loved to do with a box of paints, because it was easier than to make a man. And soon the lamplighter would be going his rounds past the Presbyterian church grounds and along by shady Tritonville Avenue where the couples walked. For Gertie had her dreams. She loved to read poetry. And oftentimes the beauty of that poetry, so sad in its transient loveliness, had misted her eyes with silent tears, that the years were slipping by for her, one by one. And but for that one shortcoming, she knew she need fear no competition, and that was an accident coming down Dalkey Hill, and she always tried to conceal it. But it must end, she felt. If she saw the magic lure in the stranger's eyes, there would be no holding back for her, for love laughs at locksmiths. Gertie would make the great sacrifice. Her every effort would be to share his thoughts. Dearer than the whole world would she be to him, and gild his days with happiness. There was the all-important question, and she was dying to know, was he a married man or a widower who had lost his wife? Or some tragedy like the nobleman with the foreign name from the land of song had to have her put into a madhouse? Cruel, only to be kind. But even if, what then? Would it make a very great difference? From everything and the least indelicate, Gertie's fine-bred nature instinctively recoiled. She loathed that sort of person, the fallen women off the accommodation walk beside the daughter that went with the soldiers, and coarse men, with no respect for a girl's honor, degrading the sex and being taken up to the police station. No, not that. She and the stranger would be just good friends, like a big brother and sister without all that other, in spite of the conventions of society with a big S. Perhaps it was an old flame he was in mourning for from the days beyond recall. She thought she understood. She would try to understand him, because men are so different. The old love was waiting with little white hands stretched out, with blue appealing eyes, heart of mine. Gertie would follow her dream of love, the dictates of her heart that told her that the stranger was her all in all, the only man in all the world for her. For love was the master guide. Nothing else mattered. Come what might, Gertie would be wild, untrammeled, free. Canon O'Hanlon put the Blessed Sacrament back in the tabernacle, and the choir sang, Laudate Dominum omnes gentes. Thank you. I was a Franciscan altar boy, I'm not doing that. And then I discovered women. And then he locked the tabernacle door because the benediction was over, and Father Conroy handed him his hat to put on, and cross-cut Edie asked, wasn't she coming? But Jackie Caffrey called out, "Oh, look, Sissy, look!" And they all looked. Was it sheet lightning? But Tommy saw two over the trees beside the church, blue and green and purple. "It's fireworks," Sissy Caffrey said. And they all ran down the strand to see over the houses in the church, helter-skelter, Edie with a pushcar with baby Boardman in it, and Sissy holding on to Tommy and Jackie by the hand, and they wouldn't fall running. "Come on, Gertie," Sissy called. "It's the bazaar fireworks." But Gertie was adamant. She had no intention of being at their beck and call. If they could run like Rossi, she could sit so she said she could see from where she was. Those eyes, his eyes, the stranger's eyes were fastened upon her, set her pulses tingling. She looked at him a moment, meeting his glance, and a light broke in upon her. White-hot passion was in that face, passion silent as the grave, and it had made her his. At last, she and the stranger were left alone without the others to pry and pass remarks, and she knew he could be trusted to death, steadfast, a sterling man, a man of inflexible honor to his fingertips. His face and hands were working, and a tremor went over her. She leaned back far to look up where the fireworks were, and she caught her knee in her hand so as not to fall back, looking up, and there was no one to see, only him and her. When she revealed all her gracefully, beautifully shaped legs like that, subtly soft and delicately rounded, and she seemed to hear the passing of his heart, his hoarse breathing, because she knew about the passion of men like that, hot-blooded like Bertha Supple had told her, once in dead secret, and made her swear she'd never tell about the gentleman lodger that was staying with them, that had pictures cut out of the papers of those skirt dancers and high kickers, and she said he used to do something not very nice that you could imagine sometimes in bed. But this was altogether different from a thing like that, because there was all the difference, because she could almost feel him draw her face to his, and the first quick hot touch of his handsome full lips. Besides, there was absolution, so long as you didn't do the other thing before being married. And there ought to be women priests that would understand without your telling out. Right? And Sissy Caffrey, too, sometimes had that dreamy kind of dreamy look in her eyes, so that she too, my dear, and Winnie Rippingham, so mad about actors' photographs, and besides, it was on account of that other thing coming on the way it did. And then Jackie Caffrey shouted to, "Look, look, there was another," and she leaned back, and the garters were blue to match on account of the transparent, and they all saw it and shouted to, "Look, look, it was," and she leaned back ever so far to see the fireworks, and something queer was flying through the air, a soft thing to and fro, dark, and she saw a long Roman candle going up over the tree, up, up. And in the tense hush, they were all breathless with excitement as it went higher and higher, and she had to lean back more and so look up after it. high, almost out of sight, and her face was suffused with a divine and entrancing blush from straining back, and she could see her other things too. Nain-soup knickers, the fabric that caresses the skin better than those other pettiwit, the green 4 and 11 on account of being white. And she let him, and she saw that he saw, and then it went so high, it went out of sight, and she was trembling in every limb from being bent back so far that he had a full view high up over her knee where no one ever, not even on the swing or waiting, and she wasn't ashamed. And he wasn't either to look in that immodest way like that, because he couldn't resist the sight of the wondrous revealment half offered, like those skirt dancers behaving so immodest before gentlemen, looking, and he kept on looking. She would fain have cried to him chokingly, held out her snowy, slender arms to him to come, to feel his lips laid on her white brow, the cry of a young girl's love, a little strangled cry, wrung from her, that cry that rung through the ages. And then a rocket sprang and bang, shot blind blank, and oh, then the Roman candle burst, and it was like a sigh of oh, and everyone cried oh, in raptures, and it gushed out of it a stream of rain gold hair threads, and they shed, and they were all greeny, dewy stars falling with golden, oh so lovely, oh so soft, sweet, soft. Then all melted away, jewelling in the green air. All was silent. She glanced at him as she bent forward quickly, a pathetic little glance of piteous protest, of shy reproach under which he colored like a girl. He was leaning back against the rock behind. Leopold Bloom, for it is he, stands silent with bowed head before those young, guileless eyes. What a brute he had been! At it again. A fair, unsullied soul had called him, and wretch that he was, how had he answered? An utter cad he had been. He of all men. But there was an infinite store of mercy in those eyes for him too. A word of pardon, even though he had erred and sinned and wandered. Should a girl tell? No. 1,000 times no. That was their secret, only theirs alone in the hiding twilight, and there was none to know or tell, save the little bat that flew so softly through the evening, to and fro, and little bats never tell. Thank you. That was a public service for relief.
All right. So, Colin McCann, you're probably going to be really annoyed to know something. I've never read Ulysses. I know. So, hang on a minute.